I really always think that Lumix is so overlooked. The IBIS is like it's almost like a necessity now in cameras, and a camera releasing without it, I don't understand. And I always hear like, oh, if you're like a cinematographer or you're like a industry professional, maybe this isn't one for you. But like I'll disagree with that too, because
welcome back to another episode of the Lumix Creators Podcast. In today's episode, we are sitting down with a talented filmmaker named Jeremy Baxter, aka Films by Jeremy. Now, he creates content all around different types of cameras like the Blackmagic 4K, the S5 2X, and lately the brand new-ish Lumix S9. Now, and specifically in this episode, we're going to be diving into kind of the reasons Jeremy bought the Lumix S9 before the firmware updates and before all of this other things, and how he's been using it professionally and much, much more. But without further ado, Jeremy, what's up, man?
hey, thanks for having me.
Dude, I'm stoked that we can finally sit down. Figured out we had some little audio technical difficulties, but it's all figured out now.
We are rolling, and that's great.
Yeah, you know, that's the best part. So I gave the briefest interview of who you are, what you do, kind of to my audience, kind of a little bit, but context of actually who is Jeremy, what do you do on YouTube, and what do you do professionally?
Yeah, so professionally, I do mostly real estate content. So I have a few real estate clients, and I shoot, just simple real estate videography for them, photos and videos, Instagram Reels. And then I also do my cream of the crop, and my biggest selling point for myself, my business professionally, are like my wedding films. And to a point where I just don't advertise them anymore, because it's just like such a busy, a huge endeavor, a huge take on. And that's essentially what I do. Other than that, just like business profiles, whatever my small town needs of me, I'm there for.
Yeah, weddings is the industry to get into for sure if you want consistent work with low advertisement really needs after you get started.
Yeah, and also they're like such a workout in terms of like, it's like when you work out, it's like a full body workout, but in all sort of points of videography or filmmaking. So you have your storytelling, you're hunting for light, you're an audio technician, and most of the time you're doing it solo. So you're kind of like throwing yourself into one of like the most difficult, high intensity projects you can. And yeah, I would be lying if I said that like even to this day before a wedding, I have like nightmares about like not shooting anything, or like, you get the pre-wedding jitters, but it's still like one of those things where it's like you kind of need that to kick yourself in the butt a little bit to truly like experience stress. And that's
my gosh, yeah,
you can't be on easy mode the entire time.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of why I got into the commercial world. I did a few weddings, and I'm like, this is stressful. And then I got into the commercial world. I'm like, this is not as much stress.
Yeah, you have a little bit more time, a little bit more flexibility to do things.
Yeah, just a storytelling, everything like that. So this is kind of a question I ask all of my first-time guests to kind of just dive into talking about a little bit about the Lumix cameras before we dive fully into the topic. So first question is going to be kind of what got you into the Lumix ecosystem as a whole, and what was that first Lumix camera?
Oh my goodness. So what got me into the Lumix ecosystem is I wanted to upgrade my Canon 80D to just another camera altogether. And I told the story a couple times on my channel, but I got the GH5 to basically pair that with my Blackmagic 4K. Since I just wanted something like a little more higher end than the 80D. Little did I know, like the GH5, like just out of the box, didn't have Vlog, and it was 10-bit. It was 10-bit color, so that was fine. And the autofocus wasn't good, especially with like my Viltrox speed booster and my Sigma 18-35. But what I really liked about it with the speed booster was I was able to shoot an f1.2, which was really nutty when it came to like weddings and low light. And the internal stabilization was like totally absurd. So like I didn't have to rely on my gimbal as much anymore, but I still like kind of did a little bit of that. But I was honestly at the end of the GH5, I had it for like maybe a year before I got kind of tired of it, and I wanted to upgrade to full frame. And then I was watching a bunch of like wedding film content, and I really loved this one, and I forget exactly what video it was a couple years back. And it said shot with Lumix S5. I'm like, oh, what's that? So I Googled that pretty quick, and I was like, wait, this is like everything I wanted. And again, minus like the contrast-based autofocus, was just an insanely solid camera to a point where I bought 3 of them. So I wanted like, yeah. So I still have one, but I sold 2 of them to then buy the S5 Mark IIX and the Lumix S9, which is like one of the best cameras on the market today. Well, 2 of the best cameras on the market right now. So yeah, that's kind of a bit of a brief history there.
Yeah. So is that current? What's the current camera setup? The S5 2X and the S9 is the current go-tos.
Yeah, the S5 2X for sure for like my bigger client projects, and my S9.
Now, for context, I guess for my viewers, depending when this episode gets released, Jeremy bought this camera before the unlimited recording, before the frame markers, the remote shooting. So kind of dive into what was those initial impressions of the Lumix S9 during the launch of the camera in Japan, the drama that was happening all on YouTube, and then finally what kind of made you end up purchasing the Lumix S9 for yourself.
I felt the drama like I know like I see a lot of comments like we'll start with the drama, and I know there was a comments on it like, oh, I didn't know this drama even existed, and I think it was really specifically like a Lumix creator sort of drama. So if you weren't in that space, then you really weren't in the know. But like I'm a YouTube consumer at heart, so like when it comes to drama, like I'm all in. Like so I watched Gerald Undone, and it was I think him that kind of kicked it off, right? With him not being invited to Japan because, in his opinion, his harsh criticisms on the what was it, the GH6 was it?
Yeah, the GH6, yeah.
And he's like, oh, Micro Four Thirds is dead. He was really frustrated with the camera, but like he was kind of echoing the sentiment I think of a lot of other creators in the space and people who are looking for something more with what Sony was dropping. Not so much Canon, because Canon was kind of stagnant till I think a little bit this year. And so like I think he just wanted more out of things, and so he wasn't. I don't know the back end of all that, but essentially like he started that drama. But everything that I heard, it was a great camera. It's basically the Mark II in a tiny body with a record limit. And I was like, I don't really need it. This camera for me was going to be like just like my content camera, my travel camera, my around the house, also having it as like another reliable camera for weddings. And if that meant I have to look up my watch and like okay, in 15 minutes I'm gonna go run around to the camera again and hit record, stop and hit record again, like so be it. That's fine. I never had any issues with it. I did not expect them to drop an unlimited recording, which is even better than the original S5 since it's still like a 30-minute record limit. So like the 15 minutes, all of like the little limitations really didn't get to me, and I really wanted the tiny point and shoot camera because Fujifilm was doing their thing. All these different brands were creating these smaller cameras that were like point and shoot esque with baked in Luts, baked in profiles, and then this one had baked in like a monochrome, which is like if you're pretentious, you love it, right? Like if you really like doing that black and white with a little bit of film grain, and then it like also like the customization of the Luts themselves. So I took a bunch of like I took a bunch of LUTs from the Lumix Lab app and kind of made them my own, and then put those in because I always like a more rustic, warm look to my images. And so I made something that I think is perfect. And honestly, like I took it on vacation with me. Like my wife and myself went on vacation. I took it with me, and I created like just so much content with this camera. And I didn't ever once run into an issue. That plus the the digital zoom, so going from 20 to 60 to 20 to like 95 is quite game changing. And it really is like now, I guess, like with the new updates, like just quite the perfect all around package. And I always hear like, oh, if you're like a cinematographer or you're like a industry professional, maybe this isn't one for you. But like I'll disagree with that too, because there's things called crash cams in the industry where like you rig up smaller cameras. And I think this is a camera you could rig up. It has insanely beautiful picture profiles. But yeah, it's essentially it is just a small, tiny camera that you could kind of fit into any sort of corner and manipulate the image to however you want. And it's just getting better. So
You have the black camera, and I have the green one, but I feel like with the black one, you could probably like take a little Leica monochrome sticker, put it up here somewhere, and it's like you have a budget Leica monochrome or budget Leica camera, which is pretty insane. And I also kind of thought, kind of backtracking a little bit too, of what you were saying was it was interesting the whole drama perspective, especially once the ZV-E10 Mark II camera came out, which was a very similar camera, like specs wise. The only difference was it does have some extra ports on it, the top of the microphone, and then unlimited recording, but it was APS-C with zero IBIS, which is absurd.
Yeah, that's it too. The IBIS is like it's almost like a necessity now in cameras, and a camera releasing without it, I don't understand how anyone can really use that for video.
And I'm getting away. Like I did a shoot like this last week for a commercial I'm working on for shoe products with the Lumix S9 and the 18-40, the brand new lens right here. And I was doing this product shoots and I was doing a bunch of handheld movements, and I'm like, this is nuts. Like I'm able to get like over the head robot like shots or gimbal like shots handheld with this tiny little camera. So pre-firmware update though, how are you using this camera professionally speaking? You mentioned doing the weddings, kind of hidden record. Would you use this camera specifically to run on gimbals and different things like that as well? Or is it just mostly, stationary camera?
Yeah, this is also my gimbal camera too. So for first dances, for any sort of gimbal work, because I run with the Mark IIX fully rigged out with my cinema rig, V-mount battery for the entire day. I have no time to switch that out for a gimbal setup. So this is always like, I always have like a base plate on here and then just put it on my Zhiyun Cine Pier gimbal. And it's like two incredibly lightweight things that I could just kind of have side by side. So I have my Mark IIX in one hand, gimbal in the other. So I'll put it down, get the bride and groom to pose or, walk or something like that. And I just simply have this on a gimbal doing everything I needed to do. First dances as well. And I just have that on the gimbal too. Basically, yeah, it is the gimbal camera for my weddings. And then when it comes to like reaction shots, I put it back on the tripod, super quick, hit record again. And again, like so tiny and low profile that like no one like gets nervous around it either or anything like that is.
And I think that's like the thing. It's like, this is so small that like, it's an easy camera personally speaking, because if you want to go film in public yourself, vlog, or you want to do street photography now with this new lens too, it's like such a tiny camera where it doesn't feel like everyone's looking at you being like, what are you doing with this professional camera? You can go on public and feel pretty comfortable. Like I was thinking about, I'm like, man, vlogging with this camera setup right here is so much easier than vlogging with the S5 II or 2X setup in public. But now with the firmware update, multiple frame markers, we have unlimited recording, the remote shooting, and all of these other kind of bells and whistles. How do you see yourself using the Lumix S9 more professionally speaking and personally for your YouTube channel and content? Do you see yourself kind of using it a little bit different in different ways?
I'll definitely rely on it a bit more. Like in a sense, a 15-minute record limit wasn't a bad thing for YouTube, because I will record a full hour of me yapping about something, and I think the 15 minutes was able to get me to the point and really not so much veer off topic. But now having the basically now two S5 Mark IIs, there's really no downside to just using it for my everyday work. And then sometimes I'll rig it up too with the V-mount battery and all that stuff and just play around with it. But I could easily see this being used for more higher end client projects. I haven't yet used it for real estate because I'm just so used to the S5 Mark IIX for real estate that I'm one of those people where like if I go off of my routine, it kind of messes with my day. And so like when it comes to stuff like real estate, less is more. But like I would love to give it a shot and give like an impression on that. But definitely for weddings now, I could just hit record and not like stress about, the 15 minutes. And like for YouTube too, it's like, again, the 15 minutes was good for that kind of stuff, but now having the unlimited recording and also being able to control the camera through the app. I haven't started to play with that yet, but the Lumix Lab app getting updated to then, be further away from my camera and be able to monitor that. I was actually shocked when I first not shocked, but I was a little surprised when I first opened the app and it wasn't there. So it really seemed like a natural move for them to update the app to have full camera controls and monitoring with Lumix Lab.
I mean, it's kind of nice that remote shooting for, especially for you and your line of work doing wedding films, because it's, you can, all right, hey, how is my camera doing? Or you could also
True.
check, hey, is my camera overheating right now?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, because if you are doing unlimited recording, you can run into that if you're filming a 20-minute ceremony, which if you're outside 20 minutes, likelihood of it overheating is pretty small, which I feel like 20 minutes is a long ceremony from the last time I've been to a wedding.
It's
But
it's pretty
it's,
uncommon now. Weddings are very
yeah.
much faster than they used to be.
Yeah, so I think it's like the fact is you can check like, hey, is my camera recording? Or alternatively, during ceremonies or during not the ceremony, during speeches and things like that, you can stop and hit record each time for different takes. So instead of having 45 minutes of recording, you could be like, oh, this is a different speaker. Stop, hit record while you're just eating your food, just chilling back there.
Yeah, on
Different.
the app. I haven't even thought about that. That's a good idea. I'll have to set that up.
Yeah, and I feel like I've used the Lumix Sync app before with older Lumix cameras like the S5 2X and stuff, and G9 and a bunch of other cameras, and I just never personally liked the UI design of that app because it just felt a little bit outdated and kind of just all over the place in a sense. Now, the remote shooting, from what I've done personally testing, feels a lot more fluid with the S9 versus like just using it in general. It just seems a lot easier. I still think there's still a couple added designs that they need to input in the app and make it just a little bit better. Like not being able to tilt your photos in the app still is absurd to me.
Yeah, there's a few editing things I wish they would implement sooner. Even masking would be kind of a cool thing as well for them to have.
And like I was testing on the S5 2X and I'm like, man, I wish, and I was talking to them, and maybe this would come up or maybe it won't happen, but like the fact that you can record proxy videos into two separate and another SD card on the S5 2X, it would be nice if you can transfer those proxy videos to your phone and that can have a baked in color, but then your actual footage is in vlog and it's not color graded whatsoever. So it's just kind of a non-destructive workflow where it's like you have the flexibility later on, but you can't. Yeah, that's a whole thing because people with androids, those green text guys,
That's
can't
me.
play MOV videos.
You're calling me out right now.
Yeah, but think about it. You wouldn't be able to play an MOV video on your phone versus an iPhone can.
Yeah.
But that's like the downside of why it's not there. I'm pretty sure this is all speculation. Kind of slightly pivoting before we kind of wrap up the conversation here is kind of personally speaking, when you're going to go grab that camera, why would you grab the S9 over the S5 2X? And what circumstances are you grabbing the S5 2X versus the S9?
Yeah, the S9 is definitely a camera that I would grab for more of those candid sort of shoots and candid sort of gigs where you're dealing with guests and people who are a little more, I guess, like not so media trained or not comfortable in front of a camera. I think it is the perfect camera for that. Whereas the Lumix S5 Mark IIX, a lot of times I'm working with, clients who are expecting a bigger system or who are particular about what they want to see on a shoot, or like higher end clients or businesses. It's definitely like an impressive camera to have. But a lot of times as a videographer, you really don't get those shoots very often. Like you get a lot of these starter shoots where you're doing these like run and gunny type of things. Like, oh, here's an event where like I do events like touch a truck event where the city has kids go out and learn about fire trucks and ambulances, and it's like, yeah, like if you have a massive rig, people are gonna look, and it's gonna be they're gonna be a little more timid to be on camera. But if you have something like this, no one's gonna think about it. You could just shoot, not a problem, and it's just so low profile. But the Mark IIX is a big beefy badass camera that when you rig out, you're gonna have you're gonna basically impress your clients. It's really like two different use cases there, where like one's for ease of use, one's for being a little more professional and a little more impressive in that sense. And like if you want the more weight and all that kind of stuff, you have it there. Where this one here is where the S9 is perfect for rigging onto like a gimbal and just doing more of those run and gunny type of shoots.
I definitely feel that. Like for my S5 2X, I have two of them. So one is completely rigged out almost 100% of the time,
Heck
basically,
yeah.
because I can break it all down with zero tools. It's all handheld, screwy NATO rail, so it's really quick. It takes me like 3 minutes to set up the entire camera from start to finish. And that camera's great, especially like you mentioned, pin it in front of clients. Client optics is a real thing at the end of the day because it impresses clients when you show up with a big camera. It looks all professional, has all the bells and whistles. But then when you are doing the client testimonial video, which I do have one coming up this weekend, and that's a great idea. I didn't even think about it. This camera is way, way less intimidating being like this. Granted, you're not going to look professional in front of a client, but it will get you the better shot at the end of the day. The worst part is when you're filming B-roll, especially during testimonials or anything like that, you have some type of scene going on between two characters, and the subjects are are just normal people. They're not people that are used to being in front of the camera, so they tend to like look at the camera and like dead straight in the eye, and it's just that's not what you want for any type of commercial work or testimonial videos at the time. Like you don't want people just looking into the camera. Like I tell people during interview process, like, hey, it's natural to break eye contact with people. That's totally okay. When you do, just try to look off in this direction. Don't just look at the camera, because your camera, looking at the camera just kind of breaks that entire scene, and I'm going to have to end up cutting that. So it's something that I try to do like when I'm doing these interviews. And I think even for you, there was a Instagram reel I saw of someone like taking their camera and they hand it up to people like this, and they like do a bunch of weird stuff to the camera during wedding.
Yeah, I've done that too, actually. Yep. I did that I saw that exact reel, and I implemented that in my latest wedding film. And it was, you do have to do a little bit more instruction because you're giving people a camera with loud music. They have no idea what you're trying to say. And I'm just like, hold it in front of your face and pretend it's a selfie cam. And it worked out really nice. Had like, and I had a little light on top of it too, and it looked like
the little light on top.
Yeah,
exactly. Because yeah, you just throw that little light on top, and that's like a perfect little thing. And I feel like the easy way would be like, hey, I'm trying to shoot this for your next time. Just have a clip on your phone saved, being like, this is what I'm going for. Here you go. And then they would be like, all right, bet. Especially during, dancing, they have drinks in them, 100%.
Oh yeah, they're down. Actually, one couple took the camera and started going at the other guests and filming them like that. They were like so drunk though, so like the footage was like 98% unusable, but it was a few interesting shots. But it's like, okay, you got the gist of what I was looking for. But it certainly is a camera you just like whip around. It's very stress free.
So I guess now I have one more kind of last question for you before we kind of wrap up today's episode. But before we kind of land the plane and get there, where do you want to have people check out your channel and all the good stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, my channel is just Films by Jeremy. I try to upload as regularly as I possibly can. So that's essentially it. Like I'm not crazy active on Instagram or anything like that. So Films by Jeremy YouTube.
That's the spot. So the last and kind of final question of the day here is, with the recent firmware update, all these great things, what is one thing you still wish that they could improve on the S9?
Oh man, I
gotta
lock in for a second.
The realm.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out like
obviously you can't do mechanical shutter, you can't throw a hot shoe on.
No. So you're thinking firmware
Or hardware?
Hardware, like it.
Hardware externally, I guess.
If there's one thing externally I'd love for them to sell, I don't know if it already exists. It's that when you are rigging it and you want to like do the handle, like if you do want to rig up this camera and like for whatever reason, the HDMI port and the USB are on this side. So when you're holding it, you have to like hold it all weird. Do you already have a solution for that?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I'm saying, yeah.
It would be cool for them to like release a cage or some sort of like handle that has like the cables kind of like either on the, kind of like running around the bottom or wherever. So essentially I could still grip this without the cables being on this side. It's a small thing, but it's something that like I was like, it's kind of a little annoying, but I don't rig it up anyway. But if you were buying this camera to be your first, filmmaking camera, because you really could, it will just be a little bit of annoying to get them, because you can hook up everything, but it's on this side, and if you're holding it like this, you still have to fit your USB-C. It's a little uncomfortable. So having some sort of like, adapter maybe too, just to like angle it upwards, that'd be sweet. Other than that though, there's really nothing I could think of. Does it do USB-C to SSD recording?
I don't think you can do SSD recording specifically on this. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty positive you can't, because that would make no sense.
I was gonna say, like, maybe even having an SSD. Like, I don't even use SSD, but I can see people asking for it.
Yeah, because the only reason you would really need SSD is going to be
for ProRes.
For ProRes or all Intra, but the all Intra options, I'm pretty sure you could just use V90s. Yeah, there's no. Oh wait, I was like, oh, it's right there. No, that's just S and Q. Yeah, no, I kind of agree with you. I think some type of thing. I forgot who did it, but someone made some type of something in Blender. I think it's called like some type of design where you take this off and it slides in a hot shoe, like a digital hot shoe right here, and it goes around the body and it adds a handle here and it has I don't know, whatever, this direction type of HDMI. So then you can put your hand on it without getting it in the way, so the handle's a little bit bigger, and then it has some type of digital like screen basically as a viewfinder. I think that would be sick.
That would be really cool. Honestly, the viewfinder thing never really bothered me. Like I would probably use it, but I don't miss it. It's just one of those things where it's like I could achieve the same thing without. So I like a viewfinder, don't really care. But like I'm really simple when it comes to what I look for in a camera. And I think that especially nowadays, there's just so many, great options, and every company is trying to like compete and do its own thing. And like I really always think that Lumix is so overlooked. I have other shooters look at me and go, "Oh, what are you using?" I'm like, "Oh, Lumix," and they're like, "Oh, like I actually haven't seen too many people use Lumix, or like really anybody," because it's either Sony or Canon. Actually, just Sony nowadays. Like I don't even see Canon anymore, like anywhere, like at least locally. Like again, I'm from a smaller area, but like everyone either has Sony, and then they'll think of Canon, and then Lumix is always just like kind of off to the back burner. But in my opinion, it's such an amazing camera that you could do anything with it. And I think that like once people catch on, and people are catching on, I've been seeing some YouTubers, some Sony YouTubers, start dabbling in Lumix. I think Jacked Films is his name, Jason. I don't know if you ever watch his content, but
Jason, yeah.
Yeah, but he just bought himself a S5 Mark IIX, and I was like, oh, here we go. It's starting. He's a massive creator in the space.
Yeah, no, I think it would be cool. Like, brown and yellow for sure. That
oh my gosh,
colors.
Leather, a leather color, please.
Leather would be so cool. I would love to see, maybe you could be the person, because I'm not going to be the person that does this. I would love to see like someone put like a fan right here to kind of cool down your camera, and then have some type of V-mount system, just a top handle, and use this as your monitor, and have like a mini cinema camera that's super small. Again, I'm not the person to do this, but maybe you could be the person to rig up the S9.
I have rigged out the S9 pretty heavy, but again, like it's one of those things where like I know if I made a video on it, there'd be comments like, "Oh, what's your solution for the cables on the side?" It's like I don't have any. Just suck it up, I guess.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. I'm stoked that we were able to sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Well, if you guys want to see another episode of me talking to another creator about Lumix making an APS-C camera, check out that video right there. YouTube recommends you might like this video right here. Till next one, guys. Peace.